All right. Hello, everyone. I apologize for being tardy. Well, it's only by 2 minutes. But when you're trying to get this technology to work, sometimes there are issues. And then sometimes, yeah, this technology is good when it works well. But when it doesn't, well, there are bugs that have to be worked out. So let me make sure I can see myself on YouTube, because StreamYard broadcasts to YouTube. I shared this stream across my social media earlier, so I don't know who all is going to join us, but whoever does, we are all going to learn something. I think tonight is going to be the first talk of its kind here, because I have an actual uh, physician, a cardiologist, a heart surgeon, and I don't think I've had one of those over here yet. And he's going to show us a PowerPoint presentation with actual numbers and actual data. So I don't think I've done this over here yet. So you're watching history right here. So I am going to play my intro, and then I'm gonna welcome up Dr. Surender Reddy Neravetla. I'm sorry, Neravetla. Dr. Surender Reddy Neravetla. And we're going to learn something about the heart, and we're going to learn quite a few things about the heart and blood pressure and salt, and how salt can be a harmful thing to all of us, though it's arguably a guilty pleasure for many of us, particularly in the Black community. So I hope everybody learns something tonight. So I'm going to play the intro, and then I will jump in. So everyone, Dr. Neravetla, he's prepared to answer questions. So I'm sure that during this presentation, I will have questions. And he told me as we were talking just now, he'll take all questions. So if you have questions, ask away. Let's all learn something. So let me play the intro. And actually, let me share this over on my original Big Discussions channel first. Okay. I hope everyone is having a good night out there. I hope everybody's having a good night out there. Let's see. Share this. All right, that's been shared over there. All right, let me play the intro and then we will jump in. I want to respect Dr. Neravetla's time and my own. I have to go into the office tomorrow and make the donuts as I say.
So Anwar, I see you have the periodic tables on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that?
Over. StreamYard did one of its hiccups. Hold on.
So Anwar, I see you have the periodic tables on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that all about? Why are you walking around with a chemistry chart on your chest?
Well,
yeah.
Cheryl, so this channel is a STEM channel. So when I was conceiving of it and figuring out how to grow it, I figured I should have some t-shirts to go with it. So the periodic table is critical to most of the scientific fields.
Welcome to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Science and technology are all around us, all of the time, and there are always science and technology stories to tell.
There are always science and technology stories to tell. So 2 weeks ago, ballpark 2 to 3 weeks ago, I was thinking, because I do these Saturday morning streams and it's usually me talking. And I said, who can I invite? Who can I bring on the channel? Because that will be helpful. Having guests is helpful for me growing the channel, and it's instrumental for a channel like this to grow. But also for you, the viewers, you probably get tired of me talking all the time. So interviewing is one of my skills. Not the self-gloss, but I've been told that I ask good questions. And so I was thinking, well, I need to bring some people on. I need to bring some other experts on to talk about what they do and to educate us. Who can I bring on? And so I was looking around my place, and I found this book, Salt, Black America's Silent Killer. So years ago, pre-pandemic, I was at the Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference, which is a big deal here in the Washington, D.C. area. And I think that year, again, this is pre-COVID, that year I had a press credential. So many of you know that I'm a blogger and I'm a writer. And I was looking for stories to cover. And I was writing for examiner.com. And I was looking for material at that conference to cover. And so as I'm walking through the Washington Convention Center, I passed this gentleman in hospital scrubs. Dr. Neravetla was wearing hospital scrubs at the CVC. Everyone else was in suits and dressed formally, but here's this gentleman in hospital scrubs. And I don't know how we started talking to each other, but he said, I'm Dr. Surender Neravetla. And I'm a cardiologist, and I've written this book, Salt, Black America's Silent Killer. And I think the word needs to get out about this, that there are dangers to consumptions of salt that are too high. It could be very, very harmful health-wise, and the word needs to get out. And it's particularly important for Black people. So, I kind of scratched my head and I said, okay, well, I'm here to cover stories, but this sounds interesting. I'm a blogger. I'll purchase a copy of your book. Let me slow down. I said, I'll purchase a copy of your book, and I read it. And there's some very interesting data and statistics and information in this book. I don't know if I left Dr. Neravetla's link below this stream, but I will on the playback in case you all want to purchase a copy for yourself. It's a thin book. It's not a big, Lord of the Rings type book, but there are some compelling things in here, data and also information. So that's how we met. It was by chance, and here we are 10 years later. We're going to talk about the contents of this book and Dr. Neravetla's presentation. So that's how we met. And the other reason I wanted to do this is because this is a STEM channel, and the health practitioners, physicians, surgeons, other health practitioners, optometrists, I'm drawing a blank for the others here. Those are all scientists as well. The volume of information they have to learn to get through medical school and to pass their boards and to actually practice their craft, their health craft every year, the amount of information and the amount of knowledge that they have to have is immense. And as a graduate student at the University of Michigan, the focus was my research, but part of our curriculum overlapped a little bit with what the medical students had to learn, and they have to know a lot. So I just wanted to say that. And I'm going to bring up Dr. Neravetla right now. I'm going to read his bio. Then I'm going to bring him up. And then he has a presentation that he's going to show us. So here we go. Surender Neravetla is the author, who is also the author of Salt Kills, that was published in 2012. Is the director of cardiac surgery at Springfield Regional Medical Center in Springfield, Ohio. Dr. Neravetla has performed more than 10,000 cardiac, thoracic, and vascular surgeries since 1983, and is known for his expertise in beating heart surgery, valve repairs, and minimally invasive lung resections. Indeed, this renowned heart surgeon has been recognized by the Consumers Research Council of America as one of America's top surgeons. So everyone, I'm going to welcome up Dr. Surender Neravetla.
Good evening.
Welcome, Dr. Neravetla.
I'm looking for an Ohio State banner behind me, but
I'm sorry, you're not going to find one, especially within these next 2 weeks. One quick thing. Unfortunately, your presentation disappeared on us. You should probably be able to pull it back up really quickly.
Okay.
It's probably because it was inactive and it was just sitting there. Okay. Everyone, I'm going to read a passage, and then I'm going to, once the presentation comes back up, I'm going to hand the screen over to Dr. Neravetla. I want to acknowledge UFO Kamikaze. Thank you for stopping through. Isada, thank you for stopping through. Thank you for being here as well. How is everyone doing out there in cyberspace? Everyone having a good week so far?
That's the Parkinson's bladder simulator.
Okay. If any of you all have questions, if you want to start with some basic questions right now,
yes, I'm good with starting with questions.
If you have any questions while we get the presentation booted up, please feel free to ask those questions. How are you doing over there, Dr. Neravetla?
I'm good. I enjoy answering questions.
Okay. Are you able to load it, reshare the presentation?
I will try. That's going to take a little effort. Let me try.
Okay. So everyone, in the meantime, this was also an important stream because many of you know that I'm on my own health journey. I'm trying to get my HDL and LDL back into balance here. So I think that this is a very, very timely discussion for us to have here. We have Alonzo Hall, the all-star advisor, there in the chat. We know that health and clinical records and clinical measurements, those are all critical for the insurance world, because many insurances want to know what a particular client's or consumer's health profile is like before they or when they're writing up that policy. So thank you for stopping through, Alonzo Hall. And actually, I think that was a big deal during the Obama administration, at least when President Obama was running, because I think insurance carriers wouldn't take people with pre-existing conditions. So this is it's these things overlap in ways that we don't think that they do or would. Let's see, it's Quina, thank you for stopping through. Let's see, yeah, and if any of you all have questions, feel free to ask as we get this presentation going.
So the presentation didn't load from your end?
I had it, it disappeared, and the other both those windows disappeared. You were open on the Mac, and both of those went away.
Okay. It's the day of technical difficulties.
It sure is.
I guess I'll just get a cheaper insight now.
Well, while we try to get this going, has anyone in the chat do you know anyone who's had a heart condition, or anyone who's had high blood pressure? Or sorry.
Yes, that would be a good way to start.
Okay, anyone there in the chat? Has anyone there been afflicted?
If there's some way to share it.
Sorry?
I have the presentation up.
Okay, you would just, whatever you did before to request that share, just do that again. Because it popped right up in my backstage.
Can you still see me?
I can see you.
Okay, now how about now?
There, yeah, there it is.
Okay.
Okay, so everyone, Dr. Neravetla, I'm going to read the passage really quickly, then I'm going to get out of the way so you can get started.
Okay.
Alonzo said, my uncle just suffered a stroke on Friday. Okay, everyone, this is the passage from chapter 1. This is a very powerful passage. That's why I want to read it. So I'm going to try to be quick so the technology stays working with us. Okay, the addition of salt to our daily food, while not healthy for anybody, is downright horrible for Black Americans. Let's explore this problem, starting with the following real-life scenario. All right. The phone rings at 3 in the morning. The nurse from the ICU apologetically says, I am sorry to wake you up, doc. I cannot get the blood pressure of this bypass heart surgery patient under control. She goes on, I know you are worried about bleeding problems after his heart surgery. I have already used the maximum doses of 3 different medications. I am still not able to bring down the blood pressure. Take any one of the hundreds of thousands of people who undergo heart bypass operations each year, and you will see a vertical scar right in the middle of the chest. During a typical open heart surgery, the breastbone, which is in the front of the chest, is cut open to allow access to the heart. At the end of the surgery, steel wires are used to bring the 2 halves of the breastbone together. The new bypasses created during surgery are sewn in place with very fine thread. If the patient's blood pressure rises too high after the operation is concluded and the chest is already closed, the raw cut edges of the bone can start to bleed from the heightened pressure. Any of the delicate suture lines on the heart could also break from the same high pressure causing bleeding. I got one more paragraph, everyone. This bleeding is dangerous because the blood will accumulate around the heart and prevent the heart from pumping well. If a suture line snaps from this high pressure, the sudden loss of a lot of blood could be disastrous. So you can understand why the nurse taking care of this patient is worried. I give orders with stronger class of medication and higher doses. I hope the pressure comes down because there's nothing more I or anyone else can do. All right, Dr. Neravetla, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Greetings, everyone. So I want to raise awareness of the dangers of table salt to the entire population of the world, but more specifically to Black America, as been pointed out. Heart disease and strokes, both actually are preventable, and I would call them man-made diseases. Man-made diseases. It's not just me saying that. American Heart Association, which is the largest nonprofit organization interested in prevention of heart attack and strokes, even though it carries the name American, is actually a worldwide organization. And their public statement is that 80% of heart attacks and strokes are preventable. And I would scale it even higher, unless you're living in really poverty-stricken areas of the world where there are other reasons for heart disease. Most developed countries, the number is even higher. To the point that I would categorically state heart attacks and strokes are man-made diseases. So what is the biggest reason for all these problems? And our host just mentioned when he was talking about taking care of himself from the health point of view, the first thing that came to his mind was cholesterol. He's checking his cholesterol. So as a cardiac surgeon, I really don't want to know what your cholesterol is. In fact, the cholesterol, as you can see in this slide from World Health Organization, is the bottom of the list. The number one cause of death in the world right now, going back to 1980s actually, is high blood pressure. Even tobacco has taken the second place. It used to be the public enemy number one. Now, however, high blood pressure has surpassed the tobacco-related health problems by a healthy margin, unhealthy margin, I should say. It is particularly true when it comes to Black America. And what does salt have to do with this? And first of all, what is high blood pressure? So salt is like a sponge. I carry around a sponge with me sometimes when I'm traveling. It retains water. If you have high blood pressure or heart failure, you're getting a water pill. Water pills are the most common medications used in the treatment of health problems in any hospital setting. We are trying to get rid of the excess water. So why do you have excess water in the first place? It's because of salt retains water. So why do you go to a sports bar and they serve you salty things? Because they want you to buy more beer. So the salt is like a sponge. It retains water. When it retains water, then you got a system of pipes that the blood has to flow through. And if you've got more fluid than it can handle, the pressure goes up. As simple as that. So there's the most simplistic explanation why salt causes high blood pressure. There's a second reason that taking center stage these days. We find out that salt directly affects the walls of the arteries to make them lose their elastic capacity. They're not as elastic anymore. So what do you mean by that? So the heart pumps blood into the arteries 24/7, every single heartbeat. Heart is pumping blood into the arteries. And the artery is supposed to relax to receive the blood. For some reason, the elastic capability of the heart is diminished. The pressure goes up. This is as simple as that. So you have to look at this also from the treatment point of view. Other than the water pills, what else doctors give to control high blood pressure? There are any number of medications which act in multiple different pathways for one particular purpose, that is to relax the wall of the arteries. There's so many categories of medicines, but they all have one single common goal, that is relax your arteries. So we are trying to address high blood pressure two ways: reduce the volume by getting a water pill, and relax the arteries so that they can accommodate more fluid. So why this happened in the first place? So salt retains water, salt makes the arteries choke. So what is high blood pressure? People have very little idea what high blood pressure is. They think it's something you take a pill for. Something is very common. So you take a pill like everybody else and go about your merry way. When you look at it that way, your approach to prevention of high blood pressure is very lackadaisical. Very, very lackadaisical. But high blood pressure should be looked at as a situation where your heart is pumping blood and the artery is supposed to receive it. The arteries are not relaxing enough to receive it. And what does that cause? It causes a situation where you're supposed to be like in the top graph, where the heart and the blood vessels in a very coordinated movement, every single heartbeat, 24/7, round the clock. Every time the one partner moves one direction, the other partner moves in the opposite direction to accommodate each other. That's what the heart. So every time heart pumps, artery is supposed to relax. But when you have high blood pressure, it means you have reached a point where every time the heart pumps, your arteries are saying, no, I cannot relax enough. So, no, I cannot relax. That means the heart and blood vessels, instead of being a coordinated dances with stars type of pattern, now are in a boxing ring. They're fighting with each other. Fighting with each other. The heart and the blood vessels are fighting with each other. And we call that high blood pressure. You lost the elastic capability of the arteries the way you're originally born with. That is high blood pressure. So there is a price to be paid for when your arteries are no longer as elastic as they should be. So this is a fight that we started within ourselves. We are totally responsible for starting this fight. And this is a fight between the heart and the blood vessels. Unfortunately, in this fight, there is no winners. The heart loses by fighting higher blood pressure, and it becomes bigger and bigger. You heard of enlarged heart failure, etc., leaking valves, irregular heartbeats, strokes. These are all consequences of the heart getting bigger and enlarged. The blood vessel gets damaged on the inside. The blood vessel gets damaged inside because of the scratch pad effect of that sponge that I showed you. The sponge has the other side. One side is the sponge, the other part is the scratch pad. The scratch pad part is where the arteries are getting scratched each and every single time the blood is flowing across the artery. And as it gets scratched, the inside of the lining of the artery gets damaged. And these damaged areas is where cholesterol is going to build. So in this slide I have up on there, on the top, there is a blood flow, what we call a laminar flow. The blood flow is going smoothly without making any fuss and noise. And as we sit around here, there is 5 liters of blood going through our arteries, and we know nothing about it. We don't hear anything except when you put a stethoscope and you hear the valves closing and opening, but you don't hear anything about the blood flow. The bottom picture is what is called turbulent flow. When there is a fight between the arteries and the blood vessels, you see this turbulent flow. And this turbulent flow, as you can imagine, causes a lot of damage. And that's where cholesterol builds. So this is an example on the slide. Is somebody unfortunately born with an abnormal valve, heart valve, and if somebody listens to him, he would have a heart murmur. And heart murmur means the blood flow is turbulent. When the blood flow is turbulent, these valves get damaged and get built with cholesterol and calcium, like this. This patient has neither cholesterol problem nor calcium problem, but he has a
Dr.
problem.
Neravetla, can
Yes.
you make that distinction one more time? There was turbulent flow, and then when the blood is flowing smoothly through, which one was that?
Yes, this one. You see that?
Yeah. So turbulent
So
flows on the bottom, and then the top is
the laminar, it's called laminar flow.
laminar flow.
Laminar flow.
And
And
I just want to, for the audience, I just want to convey that. So for the heart, correct me if I'm wrong, there's the venous side and there's the arterial side. There's a certain amount of resistance on that arterial side.
yes,
So the heart has to work to push that blood out to the rest of the organs.
correct. That is
Okay.
built in way to the blood. When the heart pumps, the blood goes all the way to the very fingertips. So there is, if you stand at in Cincinnati, for example, and looking on over the bridge into Ohio River, you really can't tell which way the water is flowing unless you track something on the water that is going one way or the other. And that would be an example of a top A laminar flow. Okay. And if you are near a waterfall, you can be quite far away. You can hear the sound even before you come close to it. So that is the turbulent flow. The turbulent flow damages the stones in the water and everything else over time. The
Now,
laminar flow does less likely to do that.
now in general, does this turbulent flow, does that precede accumulation of cholesterol? Is that
Yes.
how that works?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll give this is one good example. Without this valve being abnormal causing turbulence, this valve would not build like this. It'll be like a smooth curtains that open and close. And this unfortunately has to be cut out because the opening is very narrow. The valve doesn't open or not does it close. And it's built up like this. Another example of the same thing is built up like this. And we have to cut it out with a big operation and put a new valve. And that is from somebody who was born with an abnormal valve. This is another example of a valve that is abnormal from birth. We call it bicuspid valve. Means there are two leaflets instead of being three, and they create a turbulent flow, and the turbulence damages the valve over time. It takes many years actually, sometimes 40, 50 years, or even longer before all this builds up. But this is not cholesterol problem. That's what I wanted to emphasize. So
Dr. Neravetla, I have a question here. I want to make sure I capture these. He's from the
Yeah.
insurance world, and as I described, they highly consider that the personal health of their patients. Alonzo asks, does that turbulent blood flow or blood flow in general have an effect on neuropathy, so kidney damage?
Yes, it does. It does affect the principal organs that are affected are kidney, the brain, and the heart. Neuropathy is a long-term consequence of many other things, most notably diabetes, kidney failure, etc., where the nerves of the skin are damaged. That's what he's referring to. That's unfortunately way down the road. But in the beginning, these are things that happen. So on the screen, you have an example of what turbulent flow does to your arteries. Okay, let me explain. So let's say you're driving on a road at 40, 50 miles an hour, whatever the road is designed for, and suddenly you come across a fork. And when you come across a fork, you're going to slow down to take one on the other side. Let's say you got your brakes damaged, the brakes are no longer working. And if you try to negotiate the same turn with the same speed as you're traveling, then you're going to crash one side or the other. And this is what happens in nature when the blood flow is going through at bifurcations where the arteries fork into two or three, and the blood has already left the heart. It cannot slow down, so it keeps crashing on these junctions, each and every heartbeat. And just imagine the arteries here are choked; they're not as relaxed, and the the amount of flow that's coming is higher than it should be. So the damage that happens in these corners is what sets up cholesterol buildup. So every location where there is cholesterol buildup, there is a local story why that happens. Here is an example of an unfortunate fellow who is born with this is a picture of angiogram of the heart arteries. So let me walk you through that. The cardiologist went with a catheter, injected dye. Here is the heart sitting. This is one of the big arteries that carries blood to the heart itself. And you notice here the artery is forked into three. The blood flow coming this way and suddenly hits what we call a trifurcation. Trifurcation. So if you have high blood pressure or eating salt, there's continuous damage to this location from scratching effect, and cholesterol builds right here. And this blockage is so severe. These are the kind of people who go to bed without any symptoms, don't wake up. They'll be playing golf, and the next thing you know, they're fell over. So when this blockage suddenly closes, the entire heart loses blood in an instant, just like a light bulb turned off, like a light switch. So one thing to notice right here is that if it is a cholesterol problem, why it built only here? So rest of the arteries look nice and clean, no problem. It built only here. Very classic example of what we call a widowmaker blockage. A widowmaker blockage. That means people die sudden death. This fellow was lucky to come to our attention, so we rushed him to surgery. We're able to do a bypass on him. We see this very, very frequently. So this configuration, how he's born with, just like the previous valve patient who was born with an abnormal valve, predisposes to this scratching effect. On top of that, you have high blood pressure, the scratching goes on. You can give all the cholesterol medicine in the world. The risk of this problem only reduces marginally at best. But if you control the high blood pressure and cut your salt intake back, this makes a huge difference. So it's one dramatic example of what happens when the arteries fork. Is that picture clear?
Yes, I think so. And you might get to this later on in the talk, but as you were describing that, I was thinking, how much salt is too much salt?
Yes. So let me go to your question. I like
if you have
this.
questions, if you have questions in the audience, feel free to ask them. I mean, I was given a saying once: the only dumb question is that one which goes unasked. So anything,
Don't hesitate asking.
don't
please.
hesitate to ask everyone.
Okay, so how much salt is too much? So this question here is, on your screen is the sodium and potassium content of fruits and sodium and potassium content of unsalted raw nuts. So you don't need to study this and memorize any of this, but you can see at a glance that the sodium content of fruits and nuts is very low compared to potassium content. Potassium content is very high. This sodium is not table salt. This sodium is actually what you need. This is how you get your sodium requirement for the body, not by adding salt and or eating processed foods. So, but you need a very high amount of potassium. If you eat a regular servings of unsalted nuts and fruits, you will start reducing the blood pressure naturally. A study got published only 2 days ago from Vanderbilt University. By eating low salt diet only in 4 weeks, you lose one medication. You lose one medication. This is not the first time it came up. What's happening is our kidney is designed to save this sodium because there's so little in our natural food. The kidney is designed to save the sodium that is naturally present in our foods. But what we are doing is we are bombarding our kidney with approximately 70 times or more of its capacity to handle the sodium, salt. Actually, so the kidney has to go in a reverse gear, and instead of preserving sodium, it is trying very hard to get rid of the sodium. Okay, so how much salt is too much? Any amount of salt could be too much. Although American Heart Association and many other organizations have listed somewhere between 1500 milligrams to 2300 milligrams. That's the range depending on which organization you look at. And the American Heart Association has the lowest limit, that is 1500 milligrams. When I say this 1500 milligrams, please don't mistake that you need 1500 milligrams. It is the limit. Do not exceed number. Do not exceed this number. So how much do you actually need? None. Unless somebody has a very specific condition that kidney or the bowels keep losing sodium. That happens in certain endocrine conditions that you have a tumor of the adrenal gland, for example. Vast majority of the general population do not need to add salt to meet the sodium requirement. The sodium requirement of human body is so small. American Heart Association says you eat normally anything, you will meet the requirement of sodium, because you cannot eat anything without sodium naturally present.
So let me make sure I understand. So you're saying that's the upper end. You don't want to go above that number.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely. So, and how many more different things you get from eating salt? So you should know that now table salt is just as bad as tobacco, and you should really look at it the same way. If you put your effort into quitting smoking, you should put as much effort into quitting adding salty also. And what does prevention look like when compared to taking pills? This is taken from our first book. So prevention is, this is a fellow who woke up in the morning. I went to the bathroom and found the bathroom floor flooded with water. And what does he do? He takes a mop and starts cleaning the floor. But he didn't pay attention to why the water was on the floor in the first place. The water was in the floor because he forgot to turn on the faucet when he went to sleep, or the sink is plugged. One of the two reasons why the water is on the floor. So you can you can use as fancy mop as you want, try to keep up with this, but unless you unplug the sink or turn off your faucet, this is a lifelong problem. So this is prevention: unplug the sink, turn the faucet off. And this is treatment, where you take a mop and try to clean up. So high blood pressure is the most common health problem in the world. 1.2 billion people, number one problem in the world. In America, there are more than 100 million people with high blood pressure, and more than 50 to 60 to 70%, depending on what study you look at, 50 to 60 to 70% Black Americans have high blood pressure, the highest percentage of any ethnic group in the world to have high blood pressure. So we have to follow prevention. The treatment is endless job. So once you develop high blood pressure, you become a patient forever. That's it. It's like you check into your Roach Motel and never check out. And you want to scale that back. And your patient's pills keep on adding up. 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. By the time you reach your retirement age, you're on several medications. Several medications, unfortunately. So this is prevention. This is treatment. And treatment is not getting rid of the disease. Treatment in this context means control. So people often mistake, I got treated, that means you got rid of the problem. You got a flat tire, you fill up air and or put a new tire, the problem is solved. No. It's like you keep on putting air into the tire all the time. So that is, it's like a control thing. So we have to look at modern treatment of heart failure, high blood pressure as control, not treatment. Modern treatment of diabetes, also control. It's not treatment in the traditional sense. So why is it that Black America paying such a big price? Let me try to explain. And I've written the entire book explaining this in further detail. There's a study done by one Dr. Dahl decades ago, in which he took a bunch of rats and fed them salty diet. And what he noticed that some rats developed high blood pressure very quickly on the red side and died as a result of the consequence. And he noticed some rats did not develop as much high blood pressure on the green side. And whether you get high blood pressure this rapidly and this highly or not is genetically transmitted to the next generation and so on and so forth. So he called these red ones salt sensitive rats. He called these green ones salt resistant rats. Salt sensitive versus salt resistant. So it just so happens that Black America is the most salt sensitive group in the world.
So Dr. Neravetla, would this be an example of epigenetics where the environment I mean,
Yeah,
it's
so
a conscious
we are
choice,
just
but
mhm. we are just learning about epigenetics, how to manipulate it, what is it, and how we can change it. So a long way to go on that subject. But what is the source of this problem? How did it turned out to be the Black America so South sensitive? Do you want to know?
yes.
So back in the day, in a time in history, you recall, hopefully, called Middle Passage. During the Middle Passage is a time in period of history when most of the slave trade happened. And during the slave trade, um, the European traders um, landed on the area of the Africa called the Gold Coast, Western Horn of Africa, and they plundered the area and picked up young black men and women and packed them in boats like sardines. And you can see numerous images of that, like this one. When you go to Google uh, and say Middle Passage, so this is the area of Africa that most of the slave trade came from, and they were packed in boats like that and transported across the Atlantic in hot summer days and brought to various destinations. This journey typically lasted 3 months. And in the 3 months, any number of young men and women did not survive the journey. And when they did not survive, they just got thrown overboard. They just got thrown overboard. And the ones who survived and made it to the shores of the various locations, including Caribbean and the various locations, the Americas, had a sort of a defense mechanism. And that defense mechanism was being salt sensitive. There was a natural selection. So, how did salt sensitive help? Because, like we talked about, salt is like a sponge, retains water. So, people who are salt sensitive are more likely to survive the transatlantic horrific journey.
So are you
And
saying that's
yeah,
essentially you're talking about water retention?
correct.
So during a long journey like that,
Mhm.
in the lower decks of a ship, they had to
Yeah,
retain water and
those who were able to retain water more likely to made it.
okay.
So the present day Black Americans who are descendants of this slave trade are likely to be salt sensitive and retain what saved them back in the day is now coming back to hurt. So whereas immigrants like myself, I've been here since the 70s, and there are Black Americans or recent immigrants from the eastern part of Africa, for example, their salt sensitivity rates are much lower, much lower. So some people who argue make all kinds of points about this, but reality is that's the root cause of it. But we can, I don't know what we can do about it now except to know that we are salt sensitive and do all we can to educate ourselves to eat as little salt as possible and apply our collective effort against the Congress and processing industry. Please provide a low salt alternatives. They don't want to do that because they want to sell more product. Salt sells more product, and they don't want to engage in salt reduction. This has been a big challenge. So we all need to group together and do that. Here is an example of what happens when you come off only in 3 months. If you eat no salt, you come off 1 in 3 off medications, 4 out of 5 reduced medications. People will tell you you're eating tasteless, bland food. What's the fun in that, right? But and you lose weight. There's another big problem: overweight. Contrary to what you might think, people who have done this are happier, taking less medications, pain medications, less depressed, have more energy, and they intend to continue. So don't be bullied into thinking you're having a bland, tasteless diet and life. The contrary is true. You're having more energetic, lively, less pain dependent, less medication dependent, less doctor's visit, less any number of these complications that hypertension brings to you. So those who are willing and able to eat less and less salt need to stand tall and get our friends and colleagues and anybody you know to join the mission.
Well, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with you. I was telling someone, I think here on my channel, and me and my mother always talk about this when I go home. Food is habit forming, and it's all in here first. And once you get used to eating less of something or eating in a different way, your body will eventually get used to it. But you have to make the choice to do that.
So I just had a slide that I want to share with you, the dramatic difference between high blood pressure problem in Caucasians versus Black Americans. This again from the first book. So this is blue is Caucasian and red is Black American. So hypertension, blacks, and the complication. Dramatic increases. So we call it a different type of high blood pressure. Actually, when Black America comes, there's different names used for it: salt-sensitive hypertension, malignant hypertension, etc., etc. Because this high blood pressure, just like the story you just read, doesn't come under control very easily. Takes multiple medications, and severe high blood pressure, meaning blood pressure over 180, is 8 times more common in Black America. Kidney failure. And I don't know if you travel around much or not, but when you go to Black American neighborhoods, we commonly see a dialysis center. The other day, I gave a symposium in Detroit, and driving and traveling through there on the west side of Detroit, you see a gas station, a liquor store, a McDonald's, and a dialysis center. I've never seen that many dialysis centers in one single stretch. Why is that? Because 1/3 of all the people on dialysis in America are Black Americans. You know, the proportion of Black America versus Caucasian in America. One of the telling differences in, being on dialysis is no fun, okay? You're tied down to this machine 6 to 8 hours a day, every other day. It affects young people like her. And what is she going to do? I mean, she spends all her time planning around the dialysis machine. And this young lady most likely had this kidney problem during her pregnancy. During pregnancy, the blood pressure goes up. And if you don't watch it, if you don't have access to healthcare, that's a whole problem in itself. And you don't access the healthcare that's available, the blood pressure goes through the roof and knocks off your kidneys. And then you're stuck on dialysis. This lady that I met, I wrote about in my book. When I first came across in 1976, it's a young lady barely in the mid-20s. I was on dialysis. And this where we hook up this dialysis machine onto the patient's body. We call them dialysis shunts. This unfortunate lady, these shunts keep on failing. So every few days, we had to redo the shunts. So every one of the surgical trainees got to operate on her. So one day on a weekend, I was on call. These 2 little boys came, 3 and 5. I said, "Who are these guys?" I said, "These are my children." So I lost my kidney at my second child, she told me. I said to her, "Who is taking care of these children? You are all tied up to these machines all the time." Can you imagine? That is a tragedy in Black America. That really is a tragedy in Black America. And I said to myself, someday I'm going to write her story. It took me this many years, but I eventually did. And that is in that book, Salt, Black America's Silent Killer. How bad is high blood pressure in Black America? Stroke death 4 times higher, heart disease 3 times higher, heart failure risk doubled, renal failure increased 3 times.
But is that in comparison to white Americans?
Caucasians. Is the salt taste worth all these things? And like you said, it is a habit, and you got to figure out how to make tasty food without adding salt. There are many different ways. In fact, in our family, we have been salt free for 15 years. 15 years. No salt in our house. We can make every kind of traditional South Indian cooking, and American cooking, and European cooking without adding any salt. And I can assure you that if you come to our house and eat one of my wife's preparations, you cannot tell there's no salt in it. And just recently, we had this Indian festival, Diwali. I don't know if you heard of that. Big event like a Thanksgiving type event. We do a lot of cooking. So multiple preparations made, no salt. And you cannot tell there's any salt in it. You cannot tell that there's no salt in it. We gobbled up left, right, and so you might ask what might be your blood pressure if you never ate salt. And there are populations in the world that have been studied. For some reason or the other, they don't have access to salt. And there are actually 13 different populations studied. And let me see if I can get to that. By the way, I must mention to you, this heart disease and stroke are a totally human problem. Any number of mammals, like human beings that give milk through their mammary glands to their newborns, they're called
Mammals?
mammals. There are 6,000 plus different species of mammals, and except human beings, nobody else gets it.
So it's entirely diet related.
Entirely man-made, entirely diet related. And I don't know why this slide won't pop up, but anyway, so if you never ate salt in your life, has about 13 different populations identified that never did. The high blood pressure is 90 over 60. 90 over 60. And it does not go up with age.
Could we just do a quick review here for everybody? So 90, you said 90 over 60?
Yes.
So the top number, is that the diastolic or the systolic?
Systolic.
Systolic, and the lower number is the diastolic.
Yeah, what we consider normal in America is 120 over 80.
Okay.
120 over 80. So even at 120 over 80, you're already up to 50% higher than
someone else in another country.
If you never consumed salt in your life.
Never consumed salt. Interesting.
Yeah, I have that slide in my book, maybe the first book. And here is a quotation you like to read, right? You said, Gulliver's Travels, published in 1726 by Jonathan Swift. You can read this. So he was in a land of homonyms, I don't know how you pronounce it. And he was stuck there. So during one of his voyages, so there they don't use salt. He wrote about it in 1726. In 1726, we hardly knew anything about high blood pressure. Okay, so what did he write? I was at first at a great loss for salt, but custom soon reconciled that want of it. I am confident that the frequent use of salt among us is in effect a luxury and was first introduced only as a provocative to drink, except when necessary for preserving flesh on long voyages or in places remote from great markets. For we observe no animal to be fond of it but man. And as to myself, when I left this country, it was a great while before I could endure the taste of it in anything else. Okay, so my family, if you give something salty to my wife, she will spit it out. Simply spit it out. I might just swallow it out of courtesy, but she won't. And that is as simple as that. So if you take the time to take this journey on reducing salt in your food, you will not regret it. It'll be so much better for it.
So, Dr. Neravetla, is all salt the same? Because you have regular table salt, you have kosher salt, you have sea salt. Are these all the same?
Yes, unfortunately, this is a big marketing push. Okay, so if you do a Google search on sea salt, you don't see any major organizations like American Heart Association, Mayo Clinic, CDC, anybody endorsing sea salt. Okay, so in fact, I wrote a press release back in 2012 calling Costco on the carpet. You can get to that if you do a Google search, say heart surgeon and Costco. You will come across that. So I call them on the carpet for misleading their customers, saying the sea salt is good for you. They pull that ad, and since then, no Fortune 500 company actually advertises saying the sea salt is good for you. But they figured out a way, in a subliminal way, to make you believe that sea salt is good. And this thing is called, this strategy is called now made with sea salt. You go around any grocery store, you'll see a whole bunch of products. So they'll say, now made with sea salt, to give an impression that sea salt is better for you. It is not. There is a sea salt version in every ethnic group. There is kosher salt, there is Celtic salt, there is Himalayan salt, there is pink salt, there is rock salt, you name it. There's so many different types of sea salts, just to appeal to your nostalgic idea from where we all came from. Oh, this is Himalayan salt. I came from India, so I must try this. Or if you're of Irish descent, you want to try Celtic salt, like that. Okay, so unfortunately, every single sea salt is essentially the same as regular table salt, modern table salt that you find in any salt things. And the special elements they claim, some of them claim, and that's not how you get those elements. You need to get all those elements by eating things that you're supposed to eat, not by eating table salt or any sea salt. So sea salt propaganda is one of the most successful misinformation campaign around. On the top 2 or 3 misinformation campaigns. So if you ask somebody, I heard sea salt is good for you. I say, where did you hear it? Can you tell me where you heard it? You'll have a hard time telling you where you heard it. Did you verify that? You all are internet checking email and doing YouTube all day long. Did you ever take a moment to check this out? No. This is our human nature. We want to hear what we want to hear. And we want to hear something to endorse our habits. So we try to promote the same thing. So I have on this side here so many different things that come from high blood pressure. High blood pressure, strokes, heart disease, kidney failure, osteoporosis, stomach cancer, autoimmune diseases, ED, type 2 diabetes. And I also wrote about how COVID mortality goes up by eating salt. So is any of them worth you not trying salt reduction? That's the question they need to ask. Every single one is affected. Every single one. And if you're a Black American, you're at least 4 times as affected. And so here is a slide I was looking for. This is one Yanomami Indians in the Amazon jungles. They never had exposure to salt. They never ate salt. So their blood pressure is 90/60, and it never went up with age. Remained the same throughout their lifetime. So I covered a lot of ground. There's so many different areas to talk about, but I will take it from your questions, the directions that you want me to go.
Okay, well, we're just over an hour. Well, Alonzo Hall, before I get to this, Alonzo, I want to ask you a question. So it sounds like what's considered normal depends on which country you come from and which region of the world you're in, because that country you just described, what's normal there is 90/60.
Correct.
But here, normal is 100, we say 130/80.
Yeah, 120 or 80 is considered normal. 130 or 90 is considered first stage high blood pressure, and goes on and on. Once you go over 90, you definitely need, and the bottom number, you definitely need to be treated.
Okay.
Bottom number 80 to 90, you can try different lifestyle modifications like the ones I was talking about. But is over 90 consistently, bottom number, you're better off going on medications to reduce the damaging effects of high blood pressure.
Okay. There's a question here. Alonzo Hall says, I read somewhere that marijuana use has a heavy impact on blood pressure as well. Have you heard that?
Yeah, so it may be, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It may reduce your stress and pain-related problems that cause high blood pressure, anxiety and pain and social stress-related problems that cause high blood pressure, and could be assisted by these kind of things. But A paper got published yesterday from American Heart Association meeting. Says marijuana increases the risk of heart failure by 34%. And marijuana increases the risk of heart attacks and strokes by 22%. So I don't subscribe to the theory that marijuana is entirely safe. It shouldn't be illegal. I agree with that. Making it illegal makes the problem worse, in my opinion, especially to minority populations. However, we cannot promote, across the board saying marijuana is fun. It's just like smoking. We didn't realize how bad it was for until a very long time.
Well, as a pharmacologist and a toxicologist, I'm just wondering, did they talk about what dosage levels or just any marijuana?
Don't know. I mean, the jury's out there, but this is a study from today, published from Baltimore, your next door, from Washington, D.C. This story got published yesterday from American Heart Association.
Okay.
So that's the reason why no medical organization, while agreeing that it should not be illegal, have not endorsed marijuana use. This kind of data has been filtering for some time now. I don't know if you can see this slide on the screen. 30 million plus different species on the earth documented. None add salt to that food, except human beings.
Okay.
So
Doctor, okay, so there was a second question here.
Yeah.
Can you speak to, well, you already spoke to marijuana, other illicit drugs?
Don't have a whole lot of experience in terms of high blood pressure reduction or heart failure reduction with other illicit drugs. Generally don't encourage it.
Okay. When did you first start taking an interest in salt consumption in Black people? What were you seeing an unusual number of patients for these procedures, or what made you interested in this?
My original interest goes back to that young lady I met in 1976. Okay, but I didn't put two and two together until almost 2010. That's when realistically was a big light bulb went off. By the time I was already a heart surgeon for 25 years and already done thousands of these, and I was quite recognized for it, as you noted, but I did not focus on prevention at all. And it came to roost in my home, and that's when I think the light bulb went off. And that's my father passed away, and I had to go to India. And when I went to India, I was about 50 plus at that time, and noticed that so many of my age relatives and friends commonly have heart disease, stents, stroke, heart attacks among Indians under the age of 50 is very common.
Really?
Yes, very, very common. And 50% of the heart attacks among Indians under the age of 50. I said 50% of the heart attacks among Indians are under the age of 50 years age. So I came across this reality. They said everybody has a stent and or a surgery or something going on, and I noticed that none of them were smokers. So smoking was blamed as the number one problem, as I shared with you a few times. None of them smoked, so that was not the risk factor. That was the number one risk factor. So number two risk factor we blamed often is cholesterol, as I pointed out. It's a common myth that cholesterol reduction is going to save the humanity. It does not. It will help some, but won't take the place. For example, if you're a smoker, no matter how many pills you take, the damaging effects of smoking continues. Same thing with salt too. Okay. So when I looked at why, so I asked a number of my friends and colleagues to bring their lab tests, and not one of them had high cholesterol. I was extremely puzzled. Why so commonly people in India having heart attacks while they're not smokers and while their cholesterol levels are normal by our counts? Then I started looking further. I said, these are all very hypertensive. These people have very high blood pressure. 160 or 100 was common. They won't even start treating you. And I mean, my friends and classmates and family members are well-to-do members in society, not like they're poverty-stricken. They have access to healthcare. They have money and the means. But one of my cousins told me, "Oh, my doctor just told me, so and so cardiologist, famous one in the town. He told me your bottom number just reached 100. We'll watch. 6 months and a year later, maybe we'll think about starting on some medications." That was the prevailing attitude against high blood pressure. So I started looking then, wow, this is a risk factor. And I started looking at why high blood pressure would be the number one cause of cholesterol buildup. And I didn't put two and two together. And this kind of surgeries, I've been doing it right under my nose day in and day out. I just didn't put it together until that happened. I said, oh my God, I see this all the time. And this one I showed you, this is a common surgery we performed. It didn't click that this is abnormal bicuspid valve, irregular turbulent flow, and builds up like this. This has been under my nose all this time. So it took me 25 years as a heart surgeon to wake up. And then I said, oh my goodness, I need to share this information. And I came back to America, and the information about salt being bad has been known for 50 years, 50 plus years. Nobody's paying attention. So this is Dr. Dahl that I showed you that diagram of rats showing the salt sensitive, salt resistant rats. So he started his work in 1952, and he went to Congress in 1969 and testified in front of Congress. And he got a big grilling, and he held strong. So there's no need for adding table salt or sugar to human beings. There's no physiological need that we should be adding salt or sugar to our diet. Okay, this is 1969. Nobody paid attention. By that time, he had accumulated 20 plus years of research. Okay, unfortunately, he died in the mid-70s due to some other cancer. And we have not paid attention. So I started accumulating all this information with the help of my son, who is the co-author of my books, compiled all this information and wrote a book. Okay, and summarizing all this extensive literature, how salt causes high blood pressure. High blood pressure actually is the number one and number two risk factor. I put this all together and I sent to an editor. I tried to find an editor. So one editor called me, and she's from Oregon. And she said, Doc, this information has been there for 40, 50 years. And you put all that together. Why would anybody pay attention to this? It looks like a Harvard Business Review. It's already been there. So what difference does it make if you write one more? You're wasting your time, she said. I said, are you kidding me? I spent so much time putting this together. So what do I need to do to get people's attention? And she said, you write it like you can see happening to you. Write it in language. Anybody who can read English should be able to read. And if you look at it, like the story you read of somebody who has a high blood pressure or a stroke in that book that you read, and you read that, you cannot turn your mind away from it. You know somebody that has happened like that, and you see it potentially happening to you. So we spend next 1-2 years, each subject, rewrite and rewrite and rewrite at a 6th grade language, reading language. And we commissioned an artist to draw some of the diagrams that you see in the picture. So it is a work of a lot of labor. I did all this not to make money. I give away these books all the time. Actually, we give away 20,000 copies of the book so far. Okay, so none of my lectures I charge any money. I travel anywhere you want me to go, and anybody asks a question gets a copy of the book for free. I was in Detroit 3 weeks ago in Wayne State Community College campus. I said there were about 100 people in the campus. I said, ask me a question. Stop me anytime. If you ask me a question, you'll get a copy of the book. So I gave away everything that I had taken travel with me, almost 100 copies. So that's what I do. So this is a mission. It's a public service mission. And I'm glad you picked up on this and got me join your conversation. Long answer to your short question.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming and talking and sharing your mission.
Yeah, the most common questions I face is the one that you asked about sea salt. The other question I get asked is about iodine. What happens to iodine deficiency if you don't eat salt? So since you're a Michigan alum, I just remembered that. So back in the day, when we all lived in certain geographic areas and confined to those areas, and we ate and drank from that land, whatever that land produced. So it turns out that we had certain deficiencies and certain excesses. For example, there are stone belts and there are fluoride deficient areas. There still are there some of them. So that was common. So iodine deficiency was also frequent. So University of Michigan, 100 years ago, came up with the idea, your alma mater, came with the idea that we should add iodine to table salt. So everybody put salt. So that's how we overcome iodine deficiency. So that's how it came to be. Okay. The same University of Michigan recently said we no longer need to add iodine to the salt. Why? Because if you eat and drink anything that you're drinking or eating comes from God knows where, you have no idea. It comes from very broad geographic area. You don't know where your bananas coming from, where your fruits coming from, where your cereal coming from. They're from all over the world. So that kind of polarization doesn't exist. And there are a few exceptions. There are some people who might still have that. And those people need to do a Google search. What are the natural sources of iodine? And there are plenty and available easily. You should consume them instead of taking table salt. So that's a common question that comes up.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap up shortly, but your contention is, yeah, salt doesn't need to be added to anything that we
Yes.
consume.
I'm listening. I'm the messenger. This information has been there. People are not giving it attention.
Okay. Then it's just a matter of our taste buds and our palates and what we're used to consuming and how we're used to consuming it.
Yes, indeed.
The thing. Okay.
I think I covered most of the areas that I intended to cover. There are other areas like how do you get diabetes, how does it affect osteoporosis, etc., for probably another time. But let this sink in that there is a large number of diseases that affects every single person that are preventable.
Okay. Well, Dr. Neravetla, I appreciate you coming and talking to me and my audience about this. I'd love to have you back sometime to, if there are other areas we could go a little further into, such as what you just described. I think that would be educational for all of us. Let me see. I have a comment here. Shonda is in the healthcare sector as well. She asks, as a cardiovascular surgeon, what are his thoughts on African Americans with Shonda? I don't know what HTN is.
Hypertension.
Hypertension.
Yes.
Okay. And lisinopril. So that's a drug.
Yeah, that's a medication. It's one of the classes of medications. There's what is called ACE inhibitor. That's a category of drugs called ACE inhibitors.
Okay.
And there's another category called ARBs, ARB. These are generally now the trending towards becoming the first line drugs. Previously, it used to be the ones you don't, the other medications didn't work, then you would go to these ones. So people with diabetes, especially ACE inhibitors are recommended. But there is a lot of intolerance to those things as well. And in Black America, calcium channel blockers like nifedipine are more effective. So the high blood pressure doesn't come under control with one single drug. Very soon, it may come under control in the beginning. Very soon, it'll go to 2 to 3 to 4 medications. So a combination of diuretic, water pill, ACE inhibitor. There's another category called beta blockers that slow down the heart rate and relax the arteries. Another category called calcium channel blockers, that is nifedipine. So these are combinations are required to control the blood pressure. You need to hit it in many different ways. So when you bundle up so many different medications, you really don't know what's happening and what are the other problems that come with it. So you should not be looking forward to that. But I agree with her question. ACE inhibitors are favored now, especially in people with hypertension and diabetes. Just a caveat: if you already have a kidney failure, which is again consequence of diabetes and hypertension, ACE inhibitors are a problem. So you have to be taking that, under the direction of your doctor. Make sure you're monitoring the kidney and monitoring the kidney function. Great question. Thank you for the question.
Okay. You said if you already have renal failure, then ACE inhibitors are a problem.
May not be beneficial. There may be a problem.
Okay. Because I do remember that, yeah, the kidneys and the liver, they talk, and they regulate the circulating volume through talking through, well, those mechanisms. Okay.
All right.
Well, Dr. Neravetla, where can people find you and ask you questions if they want to?
You can email me directly. You can neravetla@yahoo.com. I have a website, saltkills.com. Salt kills one word, and I've written on many subjects, including vitamins and supplements, and any number of topics that we talked about, and what kind of oils, etc. You can drop a question in there as well. You can go to my website and drop a question.
So everyone, if you want to learn more, and well, I'm going to ask him to come back at some point. This is his website right here. This is his website right here. The real public enemy #1, salt.
Saltkills.com. So I would also encourage your audience to look at a 2-minute video that we produced that describes only in 2 minutes a very creative video. You'll get to it. I think it may be there on this site, but you can also go directly to it by using a Google search, Salt Black America. Do that for me, and while I'm looking at it, go to Google and do Salt Black America. See what comes up.
Salt Black America.
Yeah.
Video. Okay. Yeah, it's right here.
There's one with a French fries with a hand on it.
Yeah. Will I get a copyright strike if I play this, or do you just want me to show it?
No, you can show it and you can share it. You can do what you can. It's intended for public education. There's no copyright or anything. You can put it on your site. None of your information is copyrighted. You can share as widely as you want.
Okay. Well, I will put this underneath. Everyone, this is the video right here. It's called Salt Black America's Silent
You
Killer.
got the video. That's right. In 2 minutes tells the whole story.
Okay.
And I'm sure just about anybody can spare 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, I will put this. Yeah, I'll put this underneath the playback of this video in case anyone wants to go take a look. I looked at it. I would encourage you to take a look as well and share it with your people.
Yeah.
As this is information that we all need to know.
Yep, absolutely. Okay.
Okay. Well, Dr. Neravetla, do you have anything else you want to say at this time?
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to spread the message of prevention. Thank you for the opportunity to continue to raise awareness of the dangers of table salt, especially in Black America. I hope to come back to your site sometime.
Okay, absolutely. I'll probably think of questions as I'm more questions as I'm laying in bed tonight. I'll say I should have asked him this, I should have asked him that. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. Okay, take care. Good night then.
You should
go high state.
Of course. All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
All right, everyone. Well, I'm going to wind the stream down. Thank you to those of you who hung out and asked questions. I'll be thinking about this. I do put salt on things. I try not to go overboard. But my blood pressure is considered quote unquote normal for the United States. So I learned a few things tonight. 130 over 80, 120 over 80. That's normal for here, but in India, that's not normal. In South America, I guess that's not normal. So there's something about our diets here, and also our genetic heritage. there was something about the middle passage that's selected for people with salt sensitivity. So I will listen to this playback myself, and yeah, there was a lot here. So thank you to all of you who were there in the chat who asked questions, and yeah, I will definitely have him back. I'll ask him to come back, and I'm going to ask him if he has any other colleagues who would like to come and talk so we can learn something. I know you guys like hearing me talk, but I think it's good to have guests as well. All right, everyone, I'm going to wrap this stream up. It's 9 o'clock, and I have to go into the office tomorrow. You all know what channel this is. This is Big Discussion 76 Science and Technology. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar. If you're new to the channel, please like, share, and subscribe, and also share this out to folks in your network, as I think many of your relatives and friends are Black. So people need to hear this. If you want to make a donation to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are below in the description box. I think most of you know about my newsletter, so I'm not gonna go over that tonight. So yeah, let me wrap this up so I can have some dinner and lay down myself. So thank you once again, everyone. And yeah, I will talk to you the next time, whenever that is. And so you all know how I end these things. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. And think about how much salt you're consuming. All right. Have a good night. Bye-bye.